sorry. I'm not sorry. I know I've had a couple of whoppers of theme songs or intro songs. Welcome to Sunkworks. I'm not sure which episode this is. I think it's episode 26. Um, I wonder, want to ask a question. I know there's no one watching. This is not because self-deprecating. I'm saying I just started the stream. I'm sure no one is watching, and it says here concurrent viewers 0. But someone may watch this later. So to the person who I'm asking a question, at what point does this become uncomfortable? When is it? It definitely feels uncomfortable to me, right? I think there's uh, something methodical about music. You really, right? You can tell from something like this. You expect something to happen, and then you're waiting, and something is definitely going to happen, and you can tell it's coming, and then it just keeps coming, and then it never comes. This is, by the way, here's the what we're watching, what we're listening to. We actually are going to listen to the real theme song because I don't want you to be unfulfilled, but sometimes we have to wait longer than we'd like for something that should just come. It should. I'm sorry. This has absolutely nothing to do with the topic of the show, or maybe it does. Hidden themes. We are going to listen to the real theme, though. I want to hear it because here we go. I don't know if you caught that. That was the wrong version. I meant to play this actual Bad Piggies theme, not old theme. I have too many tabs. It's another recurring theme. Before we hear the regular version, I would like to introduce the today's show here. Let's take a look at the show description. Talk about what we're going to talk about. Then we can listen to the correct theme song. Again, apologies for playing the wrong theme song. Take a look at the show description. Yeah, okay, great. So, we're going to look at the show description here. We don't need to see me in motion to do that. All right, so today we're going to update the roadmap, which is something we've been thinking about doing for a little while. I'm using the Royal We, of course. There's only me here. And this will be the episode of Sunkworks, I guess, where I clarify something that I may have left a little bit ambiguous in the past. That when I make any pronouncements or proclamations on this show here. These are my own opinions, not the opinion of any employer or other organization, affiliation that I may represent or may have represented at any point in time in the past. So, just to get that out of the way. So, as some of you have been following the story here know, I'm no longer employed at Weaveworks. And just to give the summary version of what I've written here, which is a bit like I tend to do, just to write a lot. I'm sorry. I am sorry about that, actually, because it impacts the understandability of the message. And I'm doing it again now. I'm going off on a tangent here. What I mean to say is that I have allowed some opinions in because of my work position, which I may need to roll back now. And I am not going to say that I was wrong then or that anyone has done us dirty. I don't want to have any experience of bad feelings or share any bad feelings with anyone, although the Bad Piggies is fun. And actually a little bit energizing, I think. That's pretty good. So I want to get as much energy out of this talk as I can, and I'm not sure if anyone will ever watch it, so I'm really doing this for me. These are my opinions, just to be totally clear about that, anything I'm going to tell you about. And so I do share opinions sometimes on this show. Sometimes I suggest a method of working or use of some piece of software. In fact, sometimes I have this disclaimer at the bottom here of usually every episode where I make even clearer that these are not all good ideas, and some of these things I'm maybe even testing for the first time on the show. So I guess I just need to clear some air before we move on. And one of the things we need to do is to roll back some decisions about using some licensed software that I have to be transparent because my nature of my role, I work in open source. So while there may be some legal agreements that state something to the effect of I have received proprietary knowledge by the nature of my relation with such and such company, and I've signed those agreements from time to time when I go from one employer to the next. I can say with some specificity that I am not sharing any proprietary information. Especially when I work on open source, and that's one of the things that we see in the CNCF talks a lot is we want you to present open source only, no product pitches, right? That's one of the things that they want you to refrain from as much as possible because it sullies the venue. The venue being, depending on who you ask, it's a trade show, it's not a trade show, right? Developers, I think we prefer to think that it's not a trade show. Someone who is in a maybe leadership role might inevitably have to look at it as a trade show for positioning or strategic reasons. Whether it's good or not, I'm not who's to say. It's really has nothing to do with anything. But so if you look at some of my example repos, and I'll tell you like which ones I'm talking about in particular. Kingdom B Bootstrap repo. This is where it all began. Kingdom CI Fleet Infra. As I progressed and learned about using an organization and grew a little bit through, I built out how to do OIDC. And some of this stuff comes from guides that you see refer to documentation from Weaveworks, right? So this stuff is obviously not proprietary, although some of it may be, see, this doesn't require any enterprise license to use. If you look at some of these, you will find some of them do. Probably if I go to cluster management here, we see this as the enterprise badge. So yeah, this is a regular open source feature. That's how you're supposed to tell. So it's a little bit complicated to tell, but so what I'm saying is if I no longer work at Weaveworks, then any licenses that I would have been granted to use this software, I would no longer have those licenses. So this puts me in a bit of a difficult situation because I've built some infrastructure off of this. And this is one of the issues that I definitely raised in both in public and in private about our enterprise software. And I'm going to be probably more transparent than I should, but again, I want the message to be delivered and received by anyone who needs it. It's whether it's a administrator, company who may want to acquire some assets, or anyone in any position. I want to be transparent, for my own portfolio reasons as well, because I try to help people understand, and that's what I've always done in all my roles everywhere I go, and especially this one as an open source support engineer. My goal is to help you find the best solution for whatever it is that you're working on, and it may be something that I have a part in, or maybe I can point you at something that someone else made, and both of those can be equally good outcomes for me, because my goal is to help you, right? Not to sell you a particular piece of software, to give you a positive impression, and to make sure that we can interact fruitfully in the future too. So you should never feel put out by any of my suggestions. So anyway, back to the topic of the show. I'm not in a position to speak for Weaveworks anymore, and I don't know what will happen to Weaveworks. I wish them well, but I do have to unwind some decisions that I made in the past, because I'm no longer in a position to use the software that I was previously licensed and even employed to show. They definitely paid me to do demos of Weaveworks Enterprise. So, I cannot speak for the company or any customers, anyone who might be using the software, anyone who is in a similar position as me. I want to be able to recommend you a good solution if you have to take this software out for a similar or a different reason, right? There can be many different reasons why. It's too expensive. We can't afford it anymore. We just need to replace it. We want to get on with our business, but we the value that we've gotten out of this is no longer in excess of its costs, right? These are the ways that a decision is made in business. It's not So anyway, I do want to update the roadmap, and I don't know how deep we're going to get into that today, but I'm going to play the song, one more song here before we get going, and I'm going to organize off screen. Yeah. Oops. Put that back over here. It's better. Yeah, and so we're going to discuss not only, so what I wrote here is a sort of a roundabout way of saying, I would like to be really specific about failure modes, and I would like to talk about the way that businesses can fail, and I cannot be too specific, because if I talk about any one business, I might be in possession of some sort of insider information that I could be disclosing inappropriately, which would be a terrible shame. But if I talk about things in a generic sense and go to increase the sample size of modeling and say we're not just talking about the failure of one company but of any company, then I think I can talk a bit more freely about some things that I might have had to keep to myself prior, which it's all about framing and framework, right? I'm not trying to harm anyone. I don't think that anyone is trying to harm me, or has. Maybe we'll, as we go through and learn about the different failure modes, maybe our opinions will change about that. I did find a neat chapter in a book I was reading about weaponized collaboration, and I thought that was a very interesting topic. But neither here nor there. Anyway, where are we at here? Where are we doing our? So we had the architecture wiki. What I'm saying is I'm going to add some pages here. And some of them are going to be related to the topics that I just described, and some are not going to be related so much. And we're not going to talk too much about it until I'm a little bit more organized in my thoughts. Because, again, I do have to be careful what I say, because of non-disclosure agreements, which may even still be in force, even past the date of my employment with any given company. So we are just going to try to move forward, and if that means we have to rip some software out and replace it, then that's what we're going to do. And if we have realized along the way that we've been a bit too focused on one thing or another, we may go up a level and say, we need to think about this architecturally, whatever this is, right? Like repository structure or how software is delivered. All of these topics are in scope for Sunkworks and always have been. And they may, you know, when I say I'm under non-disclosure, I don't want to give the impression that I have any sort of non-compete because I don't know who I would be competing with, right, if I'm just in business. And I don't have a business at this point. There's no business. I'm just going to go down the list of standard disclaimers here again because I feel like I've caught myself in a trap and now I have to explain my way out of it. This is a little bit less than ideal, but if I'm terminated, then I can seek benefits, and as long as I fulfill the terms of the benefit requirements, right? I'm not trying to say anything here that would put me in a lurch. I'm just trying to say that I'm looking for work, and I'm going to note this stream down on my looking for work log for when they come by. I'm still waiting for a call, and I don't know if they're ever going to call me to investigate or if they're just going to approve my benefits claim. But I'm definitely going to get some new health insurance. That much is certain. I don't know when I will have answers for all of these questions, but some of them will go into the architecture wiki, and some of them, as we go a level up, they may go in the execution wiki, where we'll talk about specific examples. And we're going to use code word names, so there will be no Weaveworks page in here, and there will be no other business page in here. I'm just trying to think of an example of another business that I wouldn't want to be accused of talking about in a specific, but I might go up a level and generalize and say any business could have this problem. So, right, and I do want to be able to progress in the problem-solving domain, so I'm going to have to talk about those things. There's no two ways about it. Anyway, I don't remember what pages specifically I plan to add today, but we do have another theme song to listen to, so let's get that on. was magnificent. Thank you. Thank you, Bad Piggies. I hope I don't get copyright strikes for this, but I needed a theme song. I would really like for them to work it out. So, I mean, I pay for YouTube Music. I used to pay for YouTube Premium. Well, I still pay for YouTube Premium. I mean, I pay YouTube for some things. And I know that there's a monetization angle where when you're a content producer, someone can monetize, or someone else can monetize. If you're, I don't understand this stuff. I don't want to understand it. I just want to use some music in my stream. So thank you, Bad Piggies, for your contribution here. So I thought I might be able to clarify a little bit better what I'm talking about specifically, so that people understand what I mean when I say I'm updating the roadmap. Because this might not be an intuitive concept to everyone, but so here we have a new page, and we have not previously documented utilities for cluster creation in a page like this. So when I say I'm updating the roadmap, really, in many cases, I'm instantiating a roadmap for the very first time, right? We've just assumed the architecture because of a conclusion that we had to draw for one reason or another. And in my case here, I'm talking about Weave GitOps Enterprise, which I obviously had to engage with because that was the thing that we had for sale at Weaveworks. So from one perspective, as an open source support engineer, I'm mainly working on Flux, and I'm working on the open source of Weaveworks. But from another perspective, as a member of the developer experience team in a company, right? The company sells things, and you need to at least be aware of the things that the company sells, so that there's a ghost chance in hell that if someone needs one of those things, you can help them get it and benefit the company, right? That's just simple, really simple economics, right? If you don't know what you have for sale, then you can't sell it, and you won't be a part of any sales that happen. So if the company depends on sales to stay in business, then you've got a problem, unless you have another critical business function role that you can demonstrate for accounting purposes that you serve. So anyway, so we have these tools. Some of them are more open or more basic than others, and I'm kind of trying to lay things out on a single file to keep the axis as low, right? I'm not trying to do a full wordly map here with multiple terms of consideration here. I just want to kind of keep things simple. One of the problems I see, and I had a conversation earlier today about this with someone who we're talking about what types of issues do common teams find, and I'm always thinking I'm not on the common team, so I need to think about a different team than my team when I want to talk about problems that common teams, most common problems, which I think is a bit of a mistake and probably too reductive, right? If my team is not common or doesn't fit the archetype for some reason, we could explain that, but just, rather than dwell on all that, I kind of just put myself in my head as a previous job where I was a slightly more common shape of team, let's say, where we're building an application and that's our main focus, or where we've got a department and need to support another department, and that the department's purpose is to support one or more other departments, and then the departments all have their own specific purpose, like human resources, whose purpose is obvious. So in our case, we're talking about someone like a platform team, or someone who maybe is a developer who uses Kubernetes, and what are the different ways that you can use to get access to a cluster for whatever reason you need, right? So you've got Minikube and Kind, which are definitely good options for your very first cluster. If you're, I'm going to write some notes here as we go. And MicroK8s, I don't know if this is really the same type of product or not, but microcates is on Canonical. It sort of fits into the same vertical slot there, right? It's for use in a local dev environment where you might not be able to have a cluster otherwise, but you need Kubernetes so that you can develop for Kubernetes. You can't, right? You want to test in a similar an environment as you can to production. So if you're using Kubernetes in production, it stands to reason that you should be, in some circumstances, maybe not every case, but in at least some environment where you would have a dev environment to work on Kubernetes. So you could experience things before you experience them in production. That's the bottom line of what you... So on that thread, and I'm calling this Canonical with a capital C, not because it's the first word in the sentence, but because it's Canonical, the company. And then there's kubeadm, which is, I think you call it the reference implementation for a Kubernetes installer. This is where it gets a little bit complicated if you're not familiar with Kubernetes. Kubernetes reference installer. Because there are many different distributions of Kubernetes. And that's where this next thing comes. I won't get ahead of myself, but you've got your Oracle Kubernetes, you've got your AWS EKS, you've got your Azure Kubernetes service, and others. I'm not going to name too many because I don't want to focus on the distributions themselves, just as to say that they are implementation of a standard. So the standard itself is Kubernetes, and it doesn't really matter which one you pick, the story goes. So the story is... because they all have things in common that you can depend on. So when we say we're building for Kubernetes, we mean the abstract spec. We don't mean we're building for Azure Kubernetes service, usually. It depends on your particular case. But so CAPI is another open standard, CAPI. And I'm going to add another one to the list here because I've heard this OCM, and I'm going to have to expand on that with a disambiguation link too. Open cluster management. There's a different OCM. I think it's open component model. OCM. Yeah, OCM.software. So it's easy to get confused if you're ever confused. Disambiguation. All right, open cluster management. I think that's the one I got first. No, OCM.software. Open cluster management. Here we go. Open component model. All right, and who cares at all about what is the difference between these things? But maybe when we go back here and unwind this a little bit further, it'll be clear why these things are important, why they might be important at some stage of life cycle. So CAPI, Cluster API, is on Kubernetes a way to request a Kubernetes cluster. So why would you do such a thing? Well, obviously, if you need more than one Kubernetes cluster, then you should be able to requisition one in a standardized way. And what better way than through Kubernetes? So don't worry about the inherent issue of, well, if Cluster API runs on Kubernetes and we use Cluster API to provision Kubernetes, then how do we get our first Kubernetes upon which Cluster API can run? Right, this is a problem that surely some business will help you solve. I am not here to help you solve this problem. But there are also solutions in the open sphere that can help you solve this. And one of them I learned about recently is this open cluster management. So this doesn't actually solve the chicken and the egg that I just mentioned. So just understand and accept that you will need a management cluster in order to engage in something like CAPI, and it may be provisioned without CAPI. You may need to install CAPI on the first cluster, which was installed using another tool. Maybe you use EKS Cuddle, or maybe you use Google Cloud Console to provision your first cluster or something. Or Terraform or Ansible. I don't know if there's a way to provision clusters with Ansible, but I presume there is. I know OpenShift used to be done with Ansible. I don't know if it still is. So what is Weave GitOps Enterprise? How does it fit in here? Well, it gives you a workflow that you can use to request those clusters. And that's sort of what I am talking about here now. Open component model doesn't fit into this at all. I'm actually want to focus on this one. Not this one. Okay, so this is not the thread that we wanted to pull on here. Cluster creation is not part of cluster creation. So open cluster management, if you go and look at this website, why don't we see what it says? I only have a really basic understanding of this so far, but if you know Kubernetes and you look at this page, I think this says it all to me. And maybe there could be further explanation. But if you go through the docs here, what I think you find is that open cluster management, and again, I haven't used this. This is just my first impression from reading the docs. So if I'm wrong, forgive me. But open cluster management is all about workflow for making a cluster in a simple way. So instead of engaging a template, you engage a cluster through a cluster claim, and you say, I need a cluster, and then someone who knows more about clusters than you will come along and give you the right kind of cluster based on your request. That's what I'm talking about. So in Weave GitOps Enterprise, I think I can still show this. I haven't torn it down yet. I think it still works. We had this lovely workflow once you get logged in for create a cluster, right? And you can pick from a template. Say we want a Kube login cluster. Here we go, and we can pick the Kubernetes version that we want and fill out some basic fields, and we're off and running. I think I can do this here. Let's see, default. Let's pick a version. Just show you. I love. Like I said, I'm not gonna skip the punchline. I don't want. I'm afraid that if people have been following the series that I've been doing, that how hard can it be that you like the game is up. I feel like people might accuse me of something like, I don't know if you've hang on a second here. I was just talking about this too. Get distracted. Now I've got a notification. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. What was I saying then? Yes. We're all set. So we go back here. It's got this nice workflow. Create pull requests. Oh, and this is the wrong repo, isn't it? I think that is the wrong repo. Yeah, I just made one of the common errors here. So I have to close this out, and I might have to start over. Well, anyway, what you can see here is it does create some resources for you. A GitOps cluster and some other resources. And this is kind of in common with the other solution that just lets you present a simple request, in this case, cluster claim, with a value, and that's just the name of the cluster that you want. And here, a managed cluster comes along after applying the cluster claim above to any managed cluster. The value of the cluster claim is reflected in the managed cluster on the hub cluster. So anyway, this is just a system for getting you clusters through a workflow. That's what it is. And That's what I mean when I say we got to update the architecture. So I don't know that we're going to pick open cluster management for this, but we do need something to plug into this space where Weave GitOps Enterprise leaves a hole in our workflow, right? Because we were saying that self-service clusters is really important, and we need for them to be accessible to all the developers. And as long as I cannot demo licensed installation of Weave GitOps Enterprise, I can no longer recommend it. So that is my challenge now, is to see what we would recommend instead, which I've always avoided studiously because I was an employee of Weaveworks, and for me to engage that question would be like tantamount to insubordination, right? Aren't we trying to sell the solutions that the company offers? But now, today, I really have no other choice because I no longer can say that I work for Weaveworks. So if I want to push a solution, and that's a real problem that people have, then I need to put something else in that slot, and I don't have any way I can work around that. So that's what I'm working through today, and thank you all for bearing with me as I explain the problem, um, and help myself understand the problem a little bit better. But there's multiple problems, and so I'm probably going to expand these pages on my own off of the show here. But that was a lot, enough, probably enough for today, enough to get off my chest. Did we get anywhere near what we said we were going to do? The roadmap update. I'm not even sure. Let's see. Roadmap update. Yes, I think we pretty much covered it here. I'm pretty satisfied that we have answered the questions. So yeah. So in a future episode, I think we're going to uh, address this a bit more directly, like show an example of a solution that we ripped out and what did we replace it with. We're not going to try to do that today on the stream. This is just an update of the roadmap. But I do want to be clear about what I'm doing for my following, whoever that might be, um, so that we know where we're going if we're going together. And I'll see you there, I guess. I have to go. I do have to go. My time is up for now. But thank you for everything. And we don't have a sign off thing now. I think that's the next thing in the formula. I need like a catchphrase that I say when we're leaving for the end of the day. But I will just say so long for now. And see you next time. Thanks again.